Welcome to Fridays with Fintelekt. My guest today is Tadeo Jun Claravall, who considers himself a lifelong student and teacher of financial crime risk and compliance based in Sydney currently. Jun has invested over 2 decades of study and hands-on experience in the field of anti-financial crime, having spearheaded AML, sanctions, anti-bribery and corruption programs for top-tier global financial institutions, including Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, UBS, and Citibank, as a senior executive in the Asia-Pac region. Jun has published technical articles on AML and has been invited numerous times as an expert resource speaker at international financial crimes conferences since 2007. He is a certified public accountant, certified internal auditor, and certified anti-money laundering specialist. More than 2 years back, Jun founded Global Financial Crimes Learning Technologies and has since dedicated his efforts to help financial crime fighters gain higher level skills, clarity, and confidence to fight financial crime through his consulting, workshops, and scorecard software. Jun is also the host of the Financial Crimes Podcast, which is a podcast about financial crime fighters for financial crime fighters, where he goes deep into the real skills needed to achieve success in this profession. So Jun, with this, welcome to Fridays with Fintelekt.
Thank you, Shirish. It's a real pleasure to be invited, and it's a great pleasure to meet you finally.
Thanks, Jun. Likewise. So, Jun, today you're on the other side of the table. Unlike your podcast where you're answering questions, you've got to answer them. So, how does that feel?
Well, I'm very excited. It's not every day that I get the chance to be the one being interviewed. So, let's go for it.
Excellent. So, Jun, at the outset, can you give our audience an overview of yourself and maybe your career journey so far?
The first is I was born and bred in the Philippines. I am now living in my adopted country of Australia, in Sydney specifically. And I've lived and worked as a financial crime fighter in 4 countries. So the Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Australia. Shirish, I've been a financial crime fighter, I guess, for maybe 20 years now. So I'm dating myself, as you can see. I think you and I are some of the first in the industry in the region to actually start in the field of anti-financial crime in the early 2000s. And I was working in-house inside banks for 18 years. And the banks I worked for, as you've narrated in my intro, are Bank of America, JP Morgan, UBS, and Citibank. And I think I've pretty much done every conceivable role inside second line of defense, inside banking. So I've been an investigator. I started as an investigator. I've been an MLRO for a country, money laundering reporting officer. I've led departments. I've been a senior executive. And I've done roles across all disciplines of financial crime, so anti-money laundering, sanctions, and anti-bribery and corruption. So I'm one of those people who, if you're going to be doing something, I want to do the best I can and really cover as much ground as I can in a particular subject. And that's what I've done over the 2 decades that I've been doing this. And as you pointed out in my bio as well, over the past 2 years, since leaving banking, I've started my own practice as a teacher of financial crime risk and anti-financial crime programs. I continue to be a student. I love learning about this. And that's one of the reasons why I host a podcast, because I learned a lot from my guests, and also one of the reasons why I wrote the book. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about the book as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, Shirish.
Excellent. Great. It's good you brought up the book, Jun. I didn't mention that in the bio, but you recently published this one, and I believe it's called Financial Crime Fighters Book of Mentors. I'm hoping to receive my copy in the next 3 weeks, as soon as the paperback is delivered. And in this book, you've captured insights from 30 financial crime leaders from various walks of life, and they share advice, stories, lessons to really help the reader become more effective and successful in their work. But I'd like to ask you, what was the motivation that you had behind publishing this book? Why did you do it?
So let me answer that question with a question. And it's not directed at you, it's directed to the people who are watching this right now, the financial crime fighters. When you, as a financial crime fighter, face a difficult problem or situation, I mean, what do you do? Who do you go to for advice? For majority of us, we will say, well, we go to our boss, we go to our manager, our supervisor, and if they're good, they're competent, and they're willing to help you, that's good. But let me tell you that some of the best financial crime fighters out there have a secret weapon, and their secret weapon is that they have a mentor. And the mentor is someone who, as Shirish and I were talking before this recording, it's someone who's been there, done that. It's someone who has achieved, something that you are hoping to achieve someday. Someone who has traveled, the path that you are traveling. And it's good to have someone like that because they will be able to tell you where the pitfalls are, right? They'll be able to tell you where the gold nuggets are as well. And life's too short for trial and error. So if you can find a mentor, that's great. The problem is not everyone has a mentor, and it's very difficult to find good mentors, right? I emphasize the word good, because those really good mentors, those leaders in our profession, these are extremely busy people. They have a good heart, they want to help, but there's only so much time in the day, and it's very hard to get them. So that is my motivation. It's a long answer to your question, what was my motivation? That's my motivation. I want to give financial crime fighters everywhere in the world the secret weapon of having a mentor, or mentors in this case, 30 mentors, people that they can hopefully relate to, people that they can learn from. Not all of these 30 you can relate to, maybe some of them, you won't be able to relate to, but I'm almost certain that, 3 or 5 or even more than that will really resonate with you. So that's my motivation for writing the book. And the best part is all profits are going to charity. I'm not making a dime from this, not even any of the 30 global leaders. They all generously shared their time and wisdom here as a charitable endeavor. All profits will be sent to support efforts to fight modern slavery, which is some of the most heinous crimes out there at the moment, and growing as well.
Right. That's great, June. So, June, can you give us a quick summary of the book? What, and also, what would you say are some of the common characteristics of the mentors that you have chosen to highlight?
So, to answer that, I'll answer that by giving you two things. I mean, there's 2 elements of the book that is the secret sauce. And by explaining those 2, I will be answering your question around the summary and also what are the common characteristics. The 2 secret elements or secret sauce elements of the book are the questions and the leaders. So let's talk about the questions first. So the questions are really doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the book. And what I made sure of when I prepared the questions is that I want to cover questions that mentees frequently ask their mentors. These are your very frequently asked questions that someone who's looking up to someone might want to know about. And that's one. And I also carefully articulated the questions in such a way that it will draw some of the most honest answers from the leaders. And the questions, there are 18 of them, but you can really classify them into 3 categories. And the 3 categories are, number 1, questions around industry challenges. So things like, what's the best strategy for fighting financial crime? What is an effective program? What's an ineffective program? What should be changed about the regime right now, the anti-financial crime regime? What should we be doing more of, less of, start doing, stop doing? Those types of questions. The second category of questions would be career development questions. Now, I thought it's very important to have questions around career development because, we're doing this financial crime fighting for a good purpose, and that is really to deal with the problem of financial crime and the harms and reduce the harms that it inflicts. But at the same time, let's not forget, this is our job. It's our career. We want to do good at it. Because if we do good, we're able to then progress. If we're able to progress, we're able to provide more and better things for our families, etc. So career development type questions I thought was very important too. So things like, what are your best career success tips, or define career success first? what is career success for a financial crime fighter? On the flip side, what are some of the mistakes that you as a financial crime fighter have made? What are some of your failures? I love those questions, by the way, because as opposed to the success tips, you get a lot of very similar answers to that. But the mistakes, those are very personal. The failure is very personal. And the reason why I ask about those is that because if you think that your mistakes and your failures are unique to you, if you think you are special because you have this problem or you failed in this endeavor, oh, I can tell you, read the book and you will find, and you go like, oh my, okay, I'm not alone. I am not unique. And the best part is you will then know, okay, so Trish Sullivan had this same problem. This is how she handled it. Because that was part of the question. What were some of your mistakes and how did you handle it? What did you learn from the failures? How did you turn it around and make it into a success? So that's the second category of questions. The third category are personal development questions. Now, there are two types of personal development questions there. And this was really for me because I am a geek or a nerd when it comes to productivity. I love to figure out, why are some people more productive than others? Why are some people be able to do more and, bigger things and solve bigger problems than other people, but we all have the same 24 hours in a day? So what are your productivity practices and tips? I ask about their daily schedule. I ask about how do you start your day? How do you end your day? What do you do in the middle? Things like that. And I also ask a question about mentoring. It's a book on mentoring, so we got to talk about mentoring. So not only did I ask about, is mentoring important, which of course the answer yes, but how can you find a mentor? Where can we find them? How can I attract a mentor? What questions do I ask my mentor? And also the flip side is, how can I become a mentor? How can I be a good mentor? So these global leaders talk about those things. So that's the first element. The second element are the leaders. So what are the common characteristics of the leaders that I invited? Three things. The first is about probably 60, 70% of these 30 leaders are big hitters in our profession. And I'm talking about almost household names. So names like John Cusack, who is the global chair of the Global Coalition for Fighting Financial Crime right now. Previous to that, he was the chair of the Wolfsburg Group. Previous to that, or concurrent to that, he was the global head of Standard Chartered for financial crime, anti-financial crime, and then UBS. 9 out of 10 financial crime fighters would know his name. He's one of the 30. Another is Jay Ramaswamy, for example, big hitter, formerly the head of AML enforcement for the Department of Justice in the United States. He was responsible for, cases, high-profile cases, AML cases that, they were able to successfully prosecute those and really turn things around for the industry in the U.S. because of, the enforcement changed behavior as a result. Those are just 2 of the 30. So big names, and all of the leaders have maybe 20 to 30 years of experience each. If you multiply that by 30, this is like 600 to 900 years of experience. There's a lot of experience there. The second common characteristic is that, and I think this is not just for the leaders that I interviewed, but financial crime fighters in general, and I was just talking to Shirish about this before we pressed record, is that they are very generous souls. They are very generous with their time, their wisdom. They're very open to answer the questions fully. They share advice. They share mistakes and failures and their best tips. That is a common characteristic that I see for people working in anti-financial crime, much like Shirish and what he has done with Fintelekt. Now, I was just telling him how amazing the journey must have been, and he tells me about what drives him. Again, very generous soul. And the third characteristic that's common amongst the leaders is that, when I was reading through the responses, everyone has made mistakes. And, but the key things that they've learned from those mistakes and they turn things around. But now the best part is you don't need to make those mistakes yourselves. You got to just learn from them. So that's a quick summary of the book. I don't want to give much away so that people can still grab the book and support the cause and support the book at the same time.
Fantastic. So, coming to the skills, June, that you believe a financial crime fighter should have, what would you say are, let's say, the top 3 or some of the most important skills they should have? And do you think these can be acquired? I mean, do you have born financial crime fighters, or do they have to be made? Does it come naturally to some people? Are some people more inclined to perform better than others in this field? What are your thoughts around this?
It's a really good question, because, and the reason why it's a good question, because it's a difficult one to answer. I don't think there is a cookie cutter set of skills that I can point to, because, and here's why. The skills that are important to become an effective financial crime fighter really would vary based on your role and based on the experience that you have. So let me explain that a little bit more. In banking, in the second line of defense where I came from, there are basically 4 broad categories of roles. You've got advisory, investigations, technology, financial crime technology, and then core. Core is everything else, not advisory, not investigation, not tech. And depending on that role, the skills would vary. And also the experience level, you got beginners, you got seasoned financial crime fighters, which is somewhere in the middle management, VPs and up, and you've got executives. So it's like the military, you've got privates, officers, and generals. And the skill level would differ. But if you were to sort of like force an answer from me in terms of what would be a generic skill, hard skill, let's start with hard skills, because we're going to talk about soft skills in a bit. It would be, I guess, the skill, I'll call it investigative skills, or the skill of being able to think critically and join the dots. Because if you don't have that, plus a suspicious nature, gumshoe and all that, not taking things at face value, because a lot of the work that we do, whether it is looking at a case or investigating a transaction monitoring alert or whatever it is, or even sometimes navigating regulations, it's like putting a puzzle together. And the problem with this type of puzzle work is that you don't necessarily have the poster in front of you of what you're trying to build, because you're not sure exactly. You have an inkling, and you're not sure if you have all the pieces. So you got to really have that sort of investigative skills and being able to do decision making with incomplete information. So that would be a generic hard skill. In terms of soft skills, though, and by the way, I don't like the term soft skills. Let me rephrase that. Let's call it real skills. And the reason why I call them real skills is that these are skills that you can use not just at work, but in life as well. It's a real skill. But the real skills that I've seen financial crime fighters have, or those that have this really are more effective and more successful, are influencing skills, communication skills, and that includes both writing well and presenting well. I mean, I'll stop with those two, and let me explain that a little bit more. You may be the best technical financial crime fighter out there. I mean, you are the best investigations guy, and you have this really good instinct, but you're a very poor communicator and poor influencer. And, it's like having the best mousetrap, they call it, right? You have the best mousetrap, but if you can't sell it, then really what's the point, or what's the use? Or, you could be effective, but not as effective as. But at the same time, you can't also be just having the soft skill. You can be the best, presenter and all that, but there's nothing technical behind it. You may, for a time, be able to fool people, but not for a long time. It will come out. It will come out. I can promise you. I've seen that. So those are in terms of the skills. And to the question about, are they inborn? Skills by their nature are things that are learned, I think. There are certain people who have certain talents when it comes to the talent of, being able to speak more eloquently, or the talent of, having the courage to speak first, right? Because sometimes you may, have the communication skill, but don't have the courage. That's more a talent rather than a skill, but skills, learnable. And then those are the key skills, I would say, that a financial crime fighter would need to have.
Right. Interesting. So, from the individual, we go to the organization, so, how much of an influence do you believe that the organizational culture has on the individual's ability to become a better crime fighter? And if so, what would you say are the influencing elements of that culture?
I'm going to answer this in 2 parts again, because I like to give a balanced view. It's probably my compliance training. It's old programming. You got to be able to show this and that. So I'll give you a conventional answer, Shirish, and I'll give you an unconventional answer. My conventional answer to that would be yes, of course. Internal culture is very important. Tone from the top, very important, because they set the standard, they set the example, and effectively the tone from the top can override override your decisions, or give you resources or don't give you resources, right? And so those are all things that would affect your effectiveness. But my unconventional answer to this is that I don't think that it really matters that much what the organizational culture is in terms of your personal effectiveness as a financial crime fighter. Because to me, an effective financial crime fighter is someone who is doing his or her best or their best to do three things: comply with the law, implement a risk-based program, and report meaningful financial crime intelligence to law enforcement. If you are a financial crime fighter that does that to the best of your ability, then, and you have integrity, right? Which means that, you know, your word, as Gandhi says, your thought, your word, and your actions are the same. It's coherent, it's aligned. Then you have integrity. Then that to me means that you are effective wherever you are. Now, someone might say, well, that's all well and good, June, but you, as you said earlier, that management can override you. You may want to say, for example, comply with a particular requirement. Management thinks otherwise. They might say you're reading it wrong. You're reading the requirement wrong. They bring in some external legal counsel and says, you know, here's the legalistic view on it. And you go, well, you know, spirit-wise, this is really not the right thing to do. Well, you know what? My answer to you is you are not a tree. What I mean by that is that you can walk away. No one's pointing a gun at your head to say, you know, you got to follow what management says. If that's how they view things, if that's how they deal with things, then maybe it's time to move on. That's what I mean by you control your own personal effectiveness as a financial crime fighter. You take your reputation with you. And that to me is the most important thing. You can't control management and the organizational culture. If you try to influence it, you're probably going to die trying. It's very hard, but you can control your own climate. You can control your own integrity, your own culture. And that is always with you. And that's what is really in your hands. So yeah, I hope that's not too controversial or too unconventional, but wanted to post those two perspectives.
I think that's great, June. I think that's very realistic. And, you know, I think it's going to be very motivating for some of the compliance community members out there who are listening to this. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And at Fintelekt, we will do all we can to promote this fantastic work that you have created.
Thank you very much, Shirish. And if you don't mind, I'll just plug it one more time. Financial Crime Fighter Book of Mentors. It's available now. You can take it from Amazon. And all profits are going to go towards the fight against modern slavery. Go get it. Go help yourself. Help your career. And then help people who are fighting modern slavery. Thanks for giving me the platform to share my message, Shirish. And again, you're doing an amazing job with Fintelekt. I really appreciate you and what you do. We're all on the same side, as we talked about. And all the best to you.
Thanks so much, June. Fantastic having you here with us today.